All right, call the Tuesday, May 27, 2025 joint power board meeting to order. First thing I just want to do before public comments is maybe do some quick introductions here, just with some newer faces in the crowd, just so everybody knows who everybody kind of is. And then also thank everybody. I think this is the first meeting we've had outside of Elba in
a while.
8 years? I don't remember the last time. I've been on this board how long? Almost 10 years, I think, actually. I think 10 years I've been on this board. So I don't ever remember having one outside of Elba. I can't come up with one in 10 years.
There were some meetings that we had here, and I can't remember what was going on at the park where nobody was.
Did we have one in? Maybe I missed that one. But, wow. Yeah, I was going to say, I can't. I was thinking about that coming in this morning. So go ahead if you want to start, James.
James Spence. It's on the water.
Mute this here. Actually, I tried this phone, and I'm not sure why it won't mute text messages. So I'm Josh Elsing, Winona County Commissioner. I've sat on this board, like I said, at least 10 years, I think. I was former Soil and Water Conservation District Officer, and I've chaired the board for 3 years, 4 years, 3 years, something like that. So,
Bob Walkus, Wabasha County Commissioner. I've been on the board for 5 years.
Andy Cronenbush from Winona County Supervisor, filling in for Ross Reed. The second meeting I went to here. Not here, but I mean, joint powers board.
Lynn Zalber, I'm Wabasha Water Conservation District.
And David Sandrum, Homestead County Board, and first meeting. Welcome. Welcome.
So
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So a little highlight, obviously with the 3 counties coming together, Dave, a lot of our conversations is just, clearly it's the commingling and how we exist in the different watersheds and our part into it. And we're heavily influenced with agriculture and just bluff lands and things like that. So it's been interesting to see how this board has changed and things over the last decade plus that I've been on it. And the different people come and go, and really appreciate all the different involvement. So good to have you on board. So I still got to call it, even though there's nobody here. Do we have any public comments? Second time, do we have any public comments? Third and final time, do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move to line item 3, approval of minutes, February 20, 2025. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Bob, second by Lynn to approve the February 2025 minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. All right, approve the agenda. No amendments.
Just one edit under 7C for the Whitewater well sealing grant. I've got 3 sub-agreements to approve. I think another thing that needs to be added is that the board, within the parameters of the grant, to be able to let me pre-approve well sealing contracts in their in-between meetings. And then that would fit with what's in the sub-agreements.
And so do you want to add that on to like a line item 4, or do you want to?
Yes,
do you think we
4
need
is
to?
fine.
Okay. So we can add that on to pre-approval, and we can discuss that separately.
Yep.
So we'll put that under line item C, number 4, pre-approval of well agreements.
Yep. That will work.
Because I'm new. Is that just, you're doing it for just Winona County?
This is the entire Whitewater.
Okay.
For what's under the watershed district,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
funding that comes
I have
out.
So that's what I was wondering,
sub-agreements.
is if we had to do the same thing for the water person from each of the counties? Or do you got control of all of these?
They're
3?
all identical sub-agreements for each of the SWCDs in the Whitewater.
Okay.
You're discussing 1 through 3, is that correct?
Yep.
Is that
Yes,
what you were
yes.
asking? Yeah. And when we get to 4, we'll kind of have the conversation that Sheila and I had a little bit about, why we might want to look at that in potential thoughts. So, okay, so we do have an amended agenda for line item C, number 4. With that, do we have a motion to approve that agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made by Andy and second by James. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, approved consent items. Any changes in the consent?
For consent items, we have 3 payments. One is for Winona County for my time, and also we've got a website charge, and then Peterson Company, the auditor we had from last year, there were some charges for preparing the 1096 at the end of the year.
We're going to have a conversation about our audit costs today.
Yep, that
So-
is on the agenda.
All right, any discussion on the consent items? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve.
Syndrome move.
Second.
Motion by Dave, second by Bob to approve the consent items. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, board reports. Dave, this is just an opportunity that we go around and we kind of just discuss what's happening, some of the ins and the outs of the various things that we're into. So kind of just move our way around. So if you want to start us off, James?
Yeah, we had our monthly meeting, SWCD meeting last week. Not a lot of action, but there were a number of new contracts that were approved. A couple of grass waterways and that's 4 lawsuits. So, which a lot of them are still dealing with Orinoco and how they've implemented their new wastewater and water treatment services for the city residents. And, so it's about $200,000 grant for assisting Orinoco residents to seal their wells, since that's part of the requirement for getting city water.
Okay.
That's about it.
All right, thanks, James.
Waukesha County, let's see, last week we got our first projected budget numbers with kind of a shot in the dark with all the state budget cuts and everything. Running about 12% increase, levy increase the way it looks. Kind of quiet, which quiet is good. Don't have too much.
Andy?
So at our last meeting, we approved, we had quite a few projects going on the ground. Last week, I think it was, I was an alternate for River One watershed plan. And as you know, with these plans, after 10 years, you have to have a, what do they call it,
Comprehensive plan update
Yeah,
or amendment, or depending on which route you go.
Statute to review.
Yeah.
Minimally to review 10 years.
Exactly.
so anyway, from what I was told afterwards, the county was, there was a couple ways of doing it, and one was to have each county, do their own part of it. Houston Engineering offered to do the whole thing for an estimate of $86,000. It's crazy. It's very time consuming, and to my understanding, the county itself is supposed to undertake the expense of this. And I don't know if Marshall knew that. That's what,
I don't know about that.
so I don't know, that's what I was gathering anyway from some of the comments that I heard, that the county was supposed to pay for this. But anyway, after a long discussion, I made the motion. I should add that Bowser, this all goes to Bowser. They see the importance of it. the complications of it, time-consuming part of it, they offered to foot $75,000 of that $86,000. So I made the motion that we accept that offer from Bowser and put it towards the $86,000 engineering estimate. And then that did pass. And I think that just affects Homestead County from this. Homestead County does. That's not what, Waukesha doesn't have anything in the river, right?
No, just
Oh, just
Homestead.
Homestead
Yeah.
for that, this part of it,
Mhm.
yeah. So, I guess that's all our tree sales went really well.
It'd be interesting, you know, I don't know if you anticipate being on the board in 10 years, but for somebody, hey, we got to open it back up for public comments. How you doing? Bob?
You're in the hot seat.
Yeah, right there. It'd be, you know, one of the things that I would fear is that it sets precedent. So that another 10 years, now all of a sudden it's, well, we did this 10 years ago, we need to do that. And a lot of these reviews, just like a comp grant for the county, it's a statute that says you need to review it, but there's no statute that mandates the change. Meaning that it's arbitrary. You don't have to do anything. You can say, nope, business as usual, right? But what tends to happen is if the private sector gets in or something, you have to do it, and then that's when the check gets written out. So I hope somebody notes it that says, hey, if we're like where we're going or what we're doing, we don't necessarily have to make a change. And that's the way I always understood things. So does that make sense?
Well, with
I
the
don't
route,
know.
with the route,
Okay.
because it was a pilot. It was the very first plan in the state that was approved.
Right.
There were a lot of unknowns. I mean, the contractor was Houston Engineering, and this was their very first plan. Bowser didn't have an idea of exactly what things should be doing, and we certainly didn't.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of unknowns, and when that plan was put together, everything was put in there because there was a fear that if you forgot to put something in there, then
never
that would
be
mess
in there.
things up later. So,
Yep.
so it was an over influx of information and a lot of in that whole plan, and it's very difficult to go through because everything's in there. It's not streamlined, it's not prioritized, and it's effectively. And so then after that plan was written, Bowser came up with another set of recommendations. This is what needs to be in the One Watershed, One plans, and lo and behold, it was different than the set of criteria that we
Right.
put, so there's been an evolution over time, and
Well-
now the plan as is probably doesn't fit the way it should be.
No, and my fear is, and I'm thinking that's why Bowser probably put the money
They
up.
did.
That is
Because-
exactly
They did.
why.
Yeah, because they know it's not the way they should. My fear is in 10 years, we're gonna lose
It'll be-
sight of that. And then they're gonna push the cost onto the local people and say, well, you did this before, now we have to come up, and the SWCD's gotta come up with this money that, because it set the precedent, and we don't understand that the severity, and that's a lot of money for an SWCD.
Well, I don't think the money was as much of the issue as the time it takes to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Our staffs are fully
Yeah.
loaded already.
Yeah.
And
Which
then
is
to take
money.
on something to do this again, you're overburdening our staff.
And now you're saying, well, we need more staff, which is money, and that's why I'm saying we need to push it back on the state. If the state's gonna require it, the state needs to pay for it.
Well, I don't know, next time around though, it's not gonna be such a massive job because they're basically rewriting our One Watershed plan to
To
coincide
make
with the
it
new ones,
fit
right?
the new criteria,
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's hope.
yeah.
So,
Good. Okay. We got it.
At Waukesha SWCD, we always have things going on, but we spent a lot of time on a wage scale review.
On a what?
And a wage scale.
Oh, wait, I thought you said weight scale. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Along with the firm that the county had, and also your person that the county helped too, so we kind of combine our efforts. And so we got, competitive when we hire new people and advancement as uniform pathway for people to take, and changed a few things, and it wasn't too bad. I mean, we weren't disastrously off the mark, at least, so now at least we've got that to go forward, so that's.
Homestead, like every county in Minnesota, is obviously concerned about cost shifts, and I think it probably sort of falls pretty equally across. But I mean, just if things go like they go, why there's a 5 to 7% just kind of across the board levy increases based on cost shift, and then you've got normal county inflation, if you will, labor contracts. And then if you want to add an employer to it in certain areas, why, all of a sudden it gets up to like, 11 to 13% pretty quickly. So the board will have a lot of work. I don't think we're going to go to the public with that kind of a proposed levy increase, and so we'll see what happens in St. Paul. But the board, I think, irrespective, has sort of made up its mind that maybe at this point, maybe it is a good time to kind of look into the box a little bit and find out where and what we got going on, and if there are some opportunities where we can make some cost savings within the framework of government. The other thing, and I don't know if this relates or not, but we've been doing just a lot of work in St. Paul on this 9-county soil health thing, and $9 million proposed bill. It's not in the ag bill. It didn't make it, but I think it was a noble effort. I think we're going to keep certainly going. We did write a letter in support of the higher education committees. We're going to cut the what's called Minnesota Geologic Survey. I don't know if you know anything about that or not, but that's pretty important to southeast Minnesota in particular. That survey is kept, as far as I'm aware, it's kept together by the University of Minnesota, and maybe through the Extension Service. I'm not quite sure on that one, but nonetheless, it's in higher ed bill, and there was a proposal to eliminate the thing, and it's a pretty important document, from my understanding, definitely, of planning. Then the other one, the county health department did release a first quarter. Sorry, not the county, the state health department on all this well testing. I don't know if you guys know anything about that or not, but if you don't, that might be of interest to the committee at a future meeting. Because most of the samples were taken in Winona. Winona County was by far way out in front in terms of some soil samples, and Wabasha and I think Homestead actually probably had the least number of samples taken. But nonetheless, there's stuff in that water. About 10, no, I think it was 14% of the wells were bad within the test. But I don't know if that's of interest to this group or not, but it is an indicator of what's going on in groundwater in southeast Minnesota.
We actually did that program.
Did you? Okay.
And we did get a reverse osmosis system in our
Okay.
house, because we had 12.5 nitrates in ours. And then afterwards, we had a meeting where Kevin Kuhlman spoke. And he had that diagram. On that diagram, it says that if you got a well at 280 feet, you're going to have nitrates. That's exactly where our well was at. So, what he was speaking about and what he's been studying all these years.
It's an interesting statistic that since well documents have been mandated, meaning that wells are drilled properly, the amount of non-compliance wells is less than 1%.
Really?
So what you're seeing is the old, we drill until we get water, or the water isn't brown.
Yeah.
So a lot of these are substandard wells that were put in years ago that are still in use today.
Yeah.
And so they were never actually really properly put in, and that's what the seeing. So I believe it's 0.3. I believe this is what Ross Dunsmar, he's the head of our department. He says 0.3 out of all the wells that are actually in compliance and have records are actually out, or that have been put in with proper documentation that are out of compliance. So it's really what we have is a issue of old wells that were not put in correctly, sandpoint wells, shallow wells, things that should have gone down further, but cost stopped them from doing it. Nobody wanted to spend more than they had to, and then they chose to drink that water. So most of it is just is that situation. So we try to make it known to the public that these are non-compliance type wells that are really causing these issues. So, but nonetheless, getting the information out there so people know and they can make the right. So, Dave, was that everything, or did you have anything else?
No, I think everything else is just nothing standard in county board. I've come to know that.
Yeah. Well,
it's just the kind of stuff we all wallow in.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on the well thing. Winona County, one of the things that got brought up for us was making it mandatory that for a real estate purchase, that a well test is disclosed to the buyer, or at least have the opportunity for the well test to be done. So what we're finding out though is that really for the most part, because there's so few private transactions that are outside of like family transaction type scenarios, that hey, we put another statute, another government regulatory thing, and most of it's already happening to begin with through the realtors and the banks that are requiring those types of things. So, there's a little bit of pushback that just simply the precedent of government getting more involved. It goes back to what you guys that have been on this board, or people that have been on the board for years, I've said is education over regulation. We don't need more government, we need less government. And in my opinion, and hey, let's educate people rather than regulate. So, that is on the docket for one of the things with wells right now. What else? Comp plan today. Our comp plan for Winona County. We had a lot of opposition from the townships, and myself included, saying, "Hey, I don't think we need to spend all this money on a comp plan. We don't have any major big things coming up, but it did get voted in 3-2. So we are there, and we're trying to get the right community members involved. We struggle in Winona County getting people involved in these boards and different various positions. So, and getting the right people involved, so we've got a diverse mix of input. So that's one of the things coming up that we're talking about. Of course, we're still discussing our LEC center, opportunities with Winona, city of Winona to team up. What those numbers look like. We know we've got to do some project costs there for a remodel. And my stance is, hey, as long as we keep having these free opportunities to look at costs, let's take a look at what we have. So, so that's still on the docket. I would say those are probably a couple of the more major ones that we've had. Some different funding of local housings and things like that, and then of course we've got a new planning and zoning. Ross is taking over that position as well, potentially, and also some of the feedlot stuff that we're dealing with a new feedlot officer coming in. So I'm going to say that's probably us in a nutshell right now. So,
When was the last time the comp plan was reviewed?
it was 10 years and 14 years. I think it was a 10-year span, 14-year span. There's nothing glaring. We see a little rise in what I'm going to say non-urban commercial, but nothing major that we need to spend $150,000 and a lot of staff time and public time to revisit. Unfortunately, Winona County is not like Olmsted County. We're not growing. In fact, we're predicted to decline. So, to keep the attractiveness of being Winona County, and one of the bigger things I said when I was mayor of Altura is part of the attractiveness that we have is our cost of living, to keep people wanting to be here. And why do we attract people from Olmsted County, et cetera? So if we don't keep that under wraps, which it hurts because now we have to look at outside funding and what can we give, what's government philanthropy look like. And so it's a bit of a catch-22 to try to figure out how to fund things on a population that's decreasing or is projected to decrease, but yet still keep these services. So it's for us, we don't have that growth factor like other counties do. So it makes it a lot more of a challenge.
I know.
You probably know that challenge too.
Yeah, and, you know, we've talked about updating the comp plan. It's been a long time since we've done it. It's really nothing glaring in Wabash County either. It's just something that should be done once in a while.
Yeah. Well, and it was, you know, one of the things that got brought up when the initial kind of, let's say, the function of this new comp plan, what to focus on. There was a couple of glaring things that were missing when it was presented, and a lot of it had to do with small business development outside of major municipalities, and the ag sector was really missing. So those are things that I said we really need to put these as part of the scope of the comp plan, because my comment was if I was on the board for the city of Winona, this would be a perfect comp plan. Right, the message, and I said, but we're more than just the city of Winona. So you know, that's so and people agreed. So we got that changed as to what the scope was. But I couldn't find anything glaring to change, but others saw it different. So okay, more discussion and action items. Let's move on to our financial update. Anything else in the board reports? Okay. All right, we'll move on to 7, line item A, financial update. Sheila.
Okay, so in your packets, I have the financial summaries for 3 months. It'll be February, March, and April. And for each of them, our balance of checking and money market, once the funding, that the unincurred funding is pulled out, we have 121,630. And then it goes up a little bit by the time we get to April. $121,717. We did get our payment back from the Whitewater drinking water grant, so that is all done. And I guess I'll touch base on that later in the agenda.
Okay. Any thoughts on the financial update?
Just, you know, not even 30 seconds of education. So the individual counties, I should know this for Olmsted County, but exposing myself. So, like for instance, we put in like $8,000 into this thing. Okay.
Yep.
That's how it works. Okay.
Yeah, and each of the counties does it a little bit different. I might get one check. I think Winona and Olmsted, I just get one check for the entire year. But Wabasha County, I'll get 2 checks, and then lots of little checks in between, because they tie theirs with the tax assessment. So if somebody is late in paying their taxes, we don't receive that portion until they pay it. So then we'll get a check for $30 or something in the interim between those 2 payments.
I asked that question, and that's the answer I got.
Okay.
It's paid based on the
Right.
property tax.
So it comes when it comes, and I don't
So,
look for it.
fill you in, we are heavily grant-based. I mean, that's a lot of what we do. So she's a wonderful grant writer. She should be hired just to write grants. That's what I was thinking. Just what you want to do, right? No, I'm just kidding. So that's a lot of where our funding comes from, multiple levels, and, you know, so Sheila, what else on that update?
Nothing on that.
Audit proposals.
So draft audit proposals, we have, as you recall at our last meeting, I had an engagement letter from Peterson Company, and somebody noticed that the monetary value for the proposed cost was $5,000, and that's appears to be more than what we've done in the past. So we held off on signing that, and so you can see this is a separate sheet of paper from your packet. This is what we've paid Peterson since 2017 for each of the audit years. So each year goes up a little bit, and then, so I have the increase from the previous year, the dollar amount, and then the final column is the percentage increase from that previous year for that audit for that year. And we were quoted $5,000. So I connected with Samantha to find out, is this an error? No, it wasn't an error, but she did meet with Michael Peterson, and they decided that they wanted to do a baseline cost for everybody that they work with, whether it's an SWCD or a Joint Powers Board or whatever, and that base number was 5,000. And so, but after talking with him, they decided to give us a break and give us a quote for 4,500. And so that's how that came down. So that was the second proposal that I got, and that's the one, and that's in your packet. That's still a 40% increase from last year. So I called around, and I got from Wanda Anderson, Katie Jacobson, who does some audits. And so I asked for a proposal letter from her as well. And so she gave me a letter, and that's also in your packet, and she gave a range, 2,500 to 3,500. And this is after I gave her a description of how many checks we do in the course of the year, what our entity does, and so this is what she quoted us for. And so that's what we have today to consider, but she said it would not exceed the 3,500, and that depends on the amount of time it takes to review and collect the data that she needs to do the audit. So that's kind of where we are at.
So, well, Sheila knows I've always kind of been nosy about these audit situations, and actually when I was on the SWCD board, even when I was mayor and different other positions, I would always question this. So what is the audit? What are we getting for this? And even the SWCD board, when they made a motion to not audit anything over 5,000 and under, and really it's an evaluation of, do you have a lot of small transactions, large transactions, inventory. I mean, when you look at any audit of my businesses or anything else, what are you really focusing on? And I've always questioned this, and Peterson was a value, I thought, for many years, but even on the SWCD board, I suggested going to Smith Schaefer because we really, when Wanda first came on, we really needed to get some things cleaned up. And Smith Schaefer was much more in detail, so that's why Smith Schaefer is where you guys were using for a number of years, and really helped get things cleaned up, because Peterson I always felt was just an overview, and Smith Schaefer really kind of dove into it, right? So when this came up, it was a huge red flag, and just, what are we getting for this? So I think for the simplicity of what we do as a board, I don't believe there's justification for the cost. This is just raise it, in my opinion, this is just my humble opinion. Raise it, if nobody barks, great. You know what I mean? It's a government agency, and Peterson's known to do a lot of government agencies. So I think we should take a look at somebody different. I don't believe we have any complexity that we really can't catch here.
No, I'm not an employee of the board, so
Correct.
that there's a whole bunch of stuff that
Throws
ties
out.
in with employees that makes it a lot more complicated.
Yep. So my suggestion, kind of being involved with this would be to take a look at Ms. Jacobson.
I would agree. I mean, they're getting fewer and fewer auditors, and prices are always going up, but it's hard to stomach, that big of an increase in 1 year.
Yeah, and she did say that for this year you can have it for 4,500, but next
Yeah,
year it'll be
that was just
5,000. Yeah.
So, you want a motion on that, or?
We'll need one to accept that.
I would move to accept Katie Jacobson audit proposal.
Second.
Motion made by Bob, second by Lynn, to accept Ms. Jackson for our audit,
Jacobson.
or Jacobson, excuse me, for our audit proposal. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
I have to ask,
Nope, we had discussion.
Yeah, it looked perfect, but I'm just sitting here wondering, I mean, there's gotta be a lot of hungry auditors out there, maybe there's not. But they have to go to Waconia or Slate to find an auditor to come down here. It seems like a long way away, but that, with that, I'm fine with the
Yeah.
motion.
I can tell you that the Stockton, Rolling Stone, Minnesota City Watershed District, they're having a hard time finding an
Is
auditor.
that right? So it's not the case then?
There's, as Bob alluded to, there's just less and less of them out
I'm fine, let's go ahead.
there. Okay. We'll re-vote on that. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a new auditor. What's that? Slayton is straight north of Worthington, about a half hour. My grandparents were killed in Slayton. In a car crash. 1989. Yeah, that was a bad deal. All four of them died.
What'd you say it was? Isn't
My
it-
grandparents died.
Yeah, no, what, isn't it north of Whitewater?
North of Worthington, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there once. Miller, Schneider, yeah, we've been there.
Yep.
Looking at the traffic.
Yeah, if you're on the main highway, you're coming into town on the curve there, ladies swerved over. My great aunt and uncle were in the car, and my grandpa and grandma. Yeah, she swerved over, killed all four of them.
Gee.
Blew the buttons right off their shirt. 260 mile an hour head on. They were in a big old Lincoln. She made it. She's still alive. She's a vegetable, but she was 31. Bad deal. Okay, on to B, local advisory team grant.
We need a
Oh,
draft budget proposal.
Draft budget proposal, I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's all right. Okay, so.
I kind of jumped over that, sorry.
I've already submitted this. I had to send one to Winona County, but then I also received a request this past week from Wabasha. So anyway, put together a budget for the Whitewater using the grant with the local advisory team grant and this well sealing grant. Total budget for 26, 49,200. Now this would exclude any other potential grants that we might have an opportunity for. Total expenses, 47,250, a net of 1,950. This is very similar to the proposed the budget that we have for this year.
One thing, if I could ask Sheila, when we do these draft budgets, do you think we could lay in like what 25 and 26 were next to it?
That's a good idea.
Just so we can kind of see the differences.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I could.
that would help us out. It gives
Yeah.
us
It is similar to the 25.
It is, and then maybe like a red where it went up and black where, or whatever, it gives us a little idea.
Okay.
Having seen enough of these, it looks pretty close to what we normally see. So,
Mhm.
I don't know if we go back 2 years, is that enough? Maybe 2-3
I
years,
would
something like
think so.
that. Be pretty easy to do transcriptions and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing really glaring on here, so pretty simple. So anything we should be aware of? Should we have a motion to accept the draft budget then?
I would so move to accept the grant budget as proposed.
A second.
Second.
Motion made by Dave, second by Andy to accept the draft budget proposal. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion also carries. All right, now on to B. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Local advisory team grants.
Okay, so right now, the local advisory team grant, this is to support the groundwater protection rule, the working with the DWISMAs that are in level 2. And the grant we have right now ends at the end of June. And so, working with Don, got an amendment to that grant to continue for 2 more years. And did you want to say anything more about that? Or-
I guess I can just give a little update on how things are going. So Elgin so the level 2 DWISMAs down here are Elgin, Utica, and Altura. And the Elgin local advisory team has been moving a little faster than Altura. They are likely to meet here this summer one time and probably approve the best management practice list to go up to the commissioners.
Quick second, can I jump in? Just, Dave, are you familiar with the DWISMAs and what kind of Don is talking about? And I can give you a quick 20-second rundown.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so what's happening is that a number of years back, the state put a law into effect allowing them to create what they're called DWISMAs. So just picture an area that's put together that might be identified as a higher nitrate area based on that well testing and different things. They have the ability to come in and create these local groups that can sit down, and they're composed of landowners, farmers, etc., that can come in and put in what they call BPMs, best practice management, or BMPs. BMPs, there we go.
Yeah.
Best management practice, there we go. Welcome to the world of acronyms. So it is a volunteer situation to come in and do this, but it is a 50% mandatory state regulated situation that 50% of the people inside of this area have to manage their land a certain way based on the practices that are come up with. So there's been so that's a state funded activity, and there's been an ongoing series of these meetings put together with ag professionals from the state, county, different joint boards, and then obviously the landowners and such, to say, hey, we're gonna farm a certain way, we're gonna do a land management practice a certain way, and then the idea is to implement that as broad scope as you can, and a minimum of 50%. If they don't get 50% compliance, there is a rule already put into place that it can be forced.
It's not 50%.
Well, what is it?
So there's part 1 of the groundwater protection rule and part 2 of the groundwater protection rule.
Which goes up to 50.
Part 1 is across the whole state of Minnesota, which
Yep.
is no fall application of nitrogen fertilizer on vulnerable soils. And so there's a interactive map that tells you, if your farm is got vulnerable soils or not. And Southeast Minnesota has a lot of vulnerable soils, and it's been a best management practices for decades to not apply fall nitrogen down here. I mean, that's been a pretty common practice. Part 2 of the groundwater protection rule deals with the drinking water supply management areas. Those areas are delineated by the Department of Health and their hydrologists. So like the city of St. Charles has an area delineated around it, which is a drinking water protection area, or a DWISMA. And so that's the area that we're working within in each of these level 2 DWISMAs, and they have to test over 8.4 to be a level 2.
10 is the state statute.
8.4.
So is it
So
over
the
8?
drinking, the health limit is 10 milligrams per liter, and so infants under 6 months of age, pregnant women, and some high-risk individuals, that's who it really affects. And so that's been a health risk limit for a very, very long time. So that's kind of the basis behind the groundwater protection rule. In these drinking water supply management areas, we form those local advisory teams. They are going to come up with a list of best management practices to follow. 80% of the cropland acres, excluding soybean acres, need to adopt those best management practices within 3 growing seasons after that list has been approved by the commissioner. So it's kind of a lengthy process as it goes through these different processes. if 80% of cropland acres, excluding soybean acres, don't adopt the BMPs, it could go into a regulatory level.
I was thinking it was only 50, but it's 80, I guess, yeah.
And so, nobody in the state is that far yet, as far as hitting the 3 growing seasons and going through that survey to see if 80% of the cropland acres have been adopting the BMPs. There are DWSMAs with best management practice lists published that they are supposed to be starting to follow, in the next 3 growing seasons. Down here in the southeast, we don't have published lists yet. Elgin will likely be the first one. They are, like I said, getting to that point in the process where they're about ready to probably finalize that list. My counterpart, Mike Cruz, is leading the Elgin DWSMA, and I lead the Altura and Utica one. Altura is a little bit behind. What we do in this process is also some modeling work, and so we're just trying to finish up some of that modeling work in Altura, and before we come to a final decision on the best management practice list. And that the groups, those two, the Elgin and Altura groups down here, they've been well attended by the farmers and crop advisors in the area. And they seem to be pretty good groups, and they always bring up lots of really good questions too as we go through this process. Utica is on hold, kind of. They're drilling a new well. And so in that process of drilling a new well, the Department of Health hydrologist has to assess that new well, and the boundary for the drinking water supply management area could change a little bit depending on that. And so we're just kind of a little bit on a holding pattern there, but we're still doing education and outreach in that DWSMA. So in all 3 DWSMAs, we have some funding available through Department of Ag for cover crops, some soil health. So there's a list of different things, and it's the nitrogen incentive something. Oh my gosh, what can I think?
Welcome to the acronym game.
The acronym game. And we'll just, okay. Sorry, I have been on the road showing livestock with my kids since Friday, so I'm still trying to recruit.
I'm just curious, do we have municipal wells exceeding this 8 part per million threshold?
Yes, so these level 2 DWSMAs have tested over that
Really?
8.4 in the last, at least once in the last 10 years. Yeah. And so through this other incentive payment program, I'm able to work with the farmers in these DWSMAs, and I have we have contracts in place right now for some cover crops and delayed cover crop termination. I expect this upcoming year to have more acres of cover crop signed up, and we also have a nutrient management plan grant for two positions, one in Wabasha, one in Winona County, and then one in Fillmore County, 3 positions. And they write nutrient manure management plans for farmers and stuff. So we're actively working on education and outreach, kind of individual one-on-one work with farmers and stuff like that, beyond just these local advisory teams, because I find it more efficiently to work one-on-one with farmers than in meetings.
One of the missing, I'm just going to chime in on this, is so taking it to a kind of a public perspective, having been a former mayor of a small town, I was former mayor of Altura. Right now the focus has been on agriculture. Agriculture must be the problem,
Sure.
right? Yeah. And a number of years back it was golf courses and lawns, right? So we took all the FOSS out of that. Well, that didn't fix it. Now we're on to agriculture. But I do know, coming from firsthand, that part of the problem too is the aging infrastructure of the municipalities, and sewer ponds and piping and burst pipes and underground stuff, and so it's roaring its head more ugly. You know, we can look at a municipality and say, hey, is there any more cows here around this area than what there's ever been? And say, no, there's the same amount of cows that have been there for 30, 40 years, but all of a sudden we have this problem. Well, why is it there today? Or, you know, we're still fertilizing the same land, the same way we've done it for how long? So what we have is we kind of have two parts coming in, and the focus right now is on ag. And, you know, I've kind of advocated and come back and said, hey, we also have this focus on aging infrastructure, and if there's monies from the state to help some of this aging infrastructure for these small municipalities to update things and piping and underground, so and you know, they got tear up streets and everything else, so to find some of these leaks that happen. So I've advocated that we don't just solely look at agriculture, but we look at everything as a whole. So.
Other than the manure management plans, what other best management practices are sticking out that have changed?
So it's the basic ones from the University of Minnesota that have been in place for years. You know, taking proper credits, and that involves, you know, legumes, manure, fertilizer, all of it. Timing, placement of fertilizer, your basic ones that we've been talking about for decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest discussion revolves around rate, total nitrogen rate, which includes all the credits. There is set rates for these DWISMAs that the local advisory team comes into agreement for. Most of the lists that have been published so far in the state have set it at the 0.1 MRTM. So if you're not familiar with the university's recommendations for nitrogen in the state of Minnesota for corn, they have an N-rate calculator that comes up with the proper nitrogen recommendations for corn. And so there's different levels within that, and when I talk about the 0.1, it's the maximum return to nitrogen rate. So that's just a very basic overview for you if you're not familiar with that. But it gets really complicated. So that's the next discussion point for Altura, and Elgin's kind of landing on their final one for that. There's a lot of really good discussion around that. There's been a lot of good discussion around the modeling and all the research work that we have down here in the southeast, and so, you know, I continue to put in a lot of research plots with the University of Minnesota down here, with another grant through Fillmore SWCD. We have on-farm trials all over it, and then the Nutrient Management Initiative program that MBA runs. We have, I think this year, I have like 27 or 28 trials in the Southeast. So all that kind of gets brought into the discussion, which is always the biggest and longest discussion.
Well, interestingly enough, to piggyback on that, even us as a company, where, you know, a lot of discussion has been around how can I get more out of my manure, and a lot of manure is applied for nitrogen credits, not so much the phosphorus, potassium, and it's, you know, obviously the nitrogen being leachable. So a lot of what we've been getting into is the industry standard was nitropyrin for stabilizing manure, which actually doesn't do anything to actually stabilize it. It's just a paralyzer to the bacteria that converts it. So we've been doing a lot with biodegradable copolymers in manure pits and applicators and injector systems that will actually act as a physical barrier to hold that manure, meaning that we don't have to apply as much manure to gain the same amount of N credit if we can increase that by, and these are very inexpensive things to do, so whether we're treating pits or treating the injection, you know, the sites or whatever, and using existing applicators, or if there's enough there, we'll buy them, or whatever it is. Coming up with these creative ways to help, I would say predominantly hog farmers and dairy farmers is what we do a lot of that with, but to come up with these biodegradable stuff. And it's all under the pretense that, hey, we're kind of under the microscope, what can we do to fix this problem?
So coming back to this board and the grant through this board, Sheila comes to our meetings and helps organize those meetings and helps take notes during those meetings and keeps me on task. She has the local connection with everybody around here too, and works really well to kind of just keep those run efficiently and smoothly.
So with the extension of this grant, that's just to continue to fund these DWISMA meetings.
Yep.
Correct? It's
Yeah.
kind of the hall, the
Yep.
mental hall rental, the time for Sheila, the
Yep.
things like that. Which is, because of the three that we have, remind me again, are all three of those getting funded out of this? Yeah.
They touch
They
within the
touch
boundaries.
within the boundaries
Yep.
of Whitewater, yeah.
So anything that would be outside the boundaries of this would be,
Fall on the SWCDs or
yeah, so
county.
I'd have to work with somebody else, so. And I guess I just kind of sitting in this meeting today and thinking about like grants in the future, I can see potential for this group with maybe some future grants that be somewhat similar to what we do with the Fillmore SWCD, the drinking water protection grant, where they're gonna have to renew, reapply for that, to keep that one going, but within that, that's the only grant down here that had incentive payments for following the university recommended rate. And that grant is it is the southeast counties, it's all the high testing townships in southeast Minnesota, but I'm just wondering about how can we keep that one going, and I don't know if we can partner on that, or if this group could apply as well. But as far as working with producers to help incentivizing following the best rate, that is the only grant down here in southeast Minnesota that I have access to, and because there are no other grants that incentivize following the proper rate. So I'm just bringing that up because that's all I have to offer people.
I know,
when we're
and that's
meeting.
frustrating because, and I say this with the utmost respect, it's frustrating because I can poke holes in that all day long
Yeah.
with the university. And I've done that with Jeff and a few other people over the years, saying, hey, you're doing these data sets on a certain soil type that doesn't correlate to our soil type. You can't, what's good for one isn't good for all
Yeah.
type of deal. So that I wish we could. I understand the direct relationship between the university and the state, but I mean, at some point there has to be a segregation, because the idea to me of these local groups is to know your area.
Yep.
Well, we're going to know our area better than anybody else.
Yep.
And so how do we poke holes in that?
And
So-
I would say that southeast Minnesota has one of the larger data sets for on-farm trials.
I would believe it just due to
So-
our topography and geography.
Since 2015, we have drastically increased the research grade ones and the regular on-farm trials.
In large part to your work.
Yeah.
So what we're looking for here, anything else? Thank you so much, Tony, by the way.
So that's just kind of the sum of kind of what's been going on down here. I would say as a whole, I'm proud of the farmers down here for like wanting to work in our groups. I know it can be frustrating. We've had participation in these incentive payments within the DWISMAs for like cover crops and stuff like that. I want to keep it going. I want to keep that one-on-one work going and keep just trying to focus on the good things that people are doing down here. So I hope to continue that engagement as we go forward. So.
One of the biggest things that's gonna help sell all of this stuff is, I was talking with Sarah West one day, and for those that, if you're not familiar with her, she's a
She's
waste
the-
management plan, or
The nutrient management planner for out of Fillmore County.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, she wrote a plan where it was gonna actually save the farmer $40,000 in fertilizer. And that's for this year now. When harvest comes and they've done what she advises them to, and yields have not dropped or maybe increased,
Yep.
that is the quickest way to sell these programs to
Yeah,
anybody.
we do it all the time.
Yeah, so.
We show kids all the time when we're applying fertilizer. It's for us, it's easy when you own fertilizer plants and you're literally saying, hey, don't buy as much fertilizer, do this, stabilize your end, utilize it better,
Yeah.
spread it out over more acres. We do that all the time because it frees up dollars to go do something else now to
Yeah.
move forward. You're gonna put your dollars somewhere.
Some of that planning can be scary for some people.
Oh, 100%.
So,
Yeah.
And then get institutionalized. Well, if I don't do this, I don't get a credit.
yep.
I gotta put all that in out there, I don't get a credit. I do a lot of education seminars now too, showing the influence of excess anion uptake in the cation influence it's influenced in cation uptake and what causes green snap, what induces disease, the imbalance, the nitrogen to sulfur ratios, all these different ways, and we get into like atomic weights and how plants drop off and the percentage of hydrogen and all these things, how a plant metabolizes or feeds itself. And when you lay that out on the board, and a farmer gets to see that, oh my gosh, over application is actually my issue. And what I'll do is I'll draw this out. It's interesting. This really gets people to think. I draw this moon out, and I go like this, okay? And I do these on these PowerPoint slides. And I say, look, if I had 0 nutrients, if I ground this plastic thing up and put it into a pot, it looks like dirt, and I put a plant in it, can something grow? And they say, no, but it looks like dirt, right? Okay, have you ever put a whole bunch of manure out there and then scraped it all up and then went and planted through it? What grows there? Absolutely nothing. So you're farming somewhere on that arc. So I say, where are you at? Are you pushing the envelope? Because eventually excess is the same as absolutely nothing. And this opens up so many farmers' eyes when it comes to fertilizer and manure, to get them to understand how excess is actually just as detrimental as an insufficient amount.
I'm only smiling because you said what grows there, and I think winter rye grows there because I live in North Pond.
I can see where even nothing will grow. And winter rye will go right around that pile.
Last fall, and then I planted rye there right away, and that stuff is incredible. So we just
Now, it
covered
takes a
the
little
seed.
while because the soil can buffer it out, but it's indicative of that year, right? Like, so what can grow? And when you begin to lay it out, so what I tell people all the time is you've got to figure out where you're at. And one of the hardest things there is to do is to try to actually pick up out of an excess and go up. It's actually easier to predict your success on a negative side because what you do, you see the reaction much quicker, so you know where you need to go. And so one of the first things I talk about is cutting back is probably the first thing you've got to do if you're not there to actually move forward, to know what's going to induce. And so I do these seminars like this, and that gets people's attention. So we talk about nitrogen stabilizer, cutting back the non-manure, selling some to your neighbors, going over more acres. And it's just that educational piece that really gets guys going into that right direction. So it's kind of fun to see people respond to that, and that's just something I came up with years ago. All right, so we need approval for the amendment to the grant, which just extends it out 2 years. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, there was no additional funding added.
Just to be able to use it for 2
Right.
years.
And also, I will need to DocuSign this, so you need to, in the motion, say Sheila does the DocuSign. Otherwise, it'll make things really complicated.
So we need a motion to approve the amended grant for the local advisory team via DocuSign is what the motion would have to be.
So moved.
Second. All right, motion made. Andy, second by Bob to approve line item 1B, line item 1 as spoke. All those, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, Whitewater well sealing grant, number 1, approved sub-agreement with Olmsted County. Well, I think we should do these individual because they are different.
Okay.
So,
All right, so I have Whitewater has a well sealing grant. We were able to, we've sealed 2 wells to date. Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead. Keep going.
And so anyway, this grant right now ends at the end of this year. I can extend it 1 more year. We have about just over $21,000 remaining in this grant, and it's for sealing private drinking water wells or wells that are no longer being used. And the idea behind doing the grant was because somebody has on their property a well that's not being used, it's like a straw, an opening to that drinking water aquifer, and they really should be sealed if they're not being used. And so anyway, what brought this to mind is that I was talking with Skip Langer a couple months ago, And I think it was the day after our last meeting in February, and he said, you know, do you have any money for well sealing? And I says, well, yes, I do. And he says, great. And I says, but we had our meeting yesterday. And so this particular landowner, timing was of essence. They needed to get it done before he was going to prep his field. It was kind of a well that was underneath the windmill that was being removed, and I better seal this well. So this particular landowner couldn't wait until today to bring a well sealing contract, because he had to already get the field work before that. So that was one that I missed out on. And then Caitlin connected with me about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. There were 2 more wells in Olmsted County that needed to be sealed. One, it had to be done sooner than later because it was part of a property transaction. So that, we missed out on that one. But anyway, and then now we're at meetings 3 months apart versus 2 months apart. So talking, so long story short, they were able to use WinLAC dollars to seal those wells, which is good. But we still have the Whitewater grant that has funding, but we can't move the funds because when I find out, and a lot of times, talking with Caitlin, she says a lot of these landowners, they don't even know that there's funding available to seal a well until they connect with a well driller, and then they come over and give them an estimate, and they say, hey, have you connected with your SWCD? There might be some funding to help with this. Well, since they've already connected with a contractor, they're ready to do it next week. So in light of that, I connected with Dave Copeland and asked him, knowing that the Whitewater's meetings are now 3 months apart, is there, what is the best way to capture and be able to spend these funds without having to call a special meeting to approve a contract? And his recommendation was to allow the SWCDs, each of the SWCDs, to approve them, and then once the contract, it is complete, and then the invoice is submitted, then they approve that voucher, and then it comes to the Whitewater for payment. And he says that would be the most seamless way to do it. And so I connected with Karen Sonneman, and I sent her a draft similar to what we've done with cover crops in the past with the SWCDs doing the TA, and the TA is done per the well drilling, the well driller, and then it also has to meet the state's requirements for sealing a well. So the TA actually goes through the Department of Health criteria. So that's what I have. I have 3 identical sub-agreements. The caveat is that before any of the SWCDs move forward, they have to connect with me, because we do not want 3 SWCDs in the same month approving 3 well sealing contracts, and oops, that it kind of exceeds the money that we have. So anyway, that's how this came about, and so they're all identical. We have $21,600 available for these well sealing contracts. And what we have in the grant will pay up to 75% of the cost of well sealing, with a maximum of $3,000. And from what I've seen for contracts, $2,500 is about the average. But I did go with a little higher cap, just because when you're sealing a well, sometimes you find out that you have to add more cement or more, because you don't know what you have until you get in and find out.
So, little discussion, so we're talking kind of a couple different things here. We're kind of lumping all four in, really.
Right.
This got, so she had called a month ago, maybe about a month ago, and said, hey, situation, Josh, we've got this land transaction, can we do this? And my thing was, no, not without board approval. I mean, technically,
Right.
that's what the board is here for, is to look at discretionary aspect of this is where we want to put our money in this situation. So that's why it didn't happen, because we can't supersede the board. So what's really being put on the table is another situation that doesn't really circumvent the board, because ultimately we could deny it. We could deny the payment, which now puts the person into, chances of that happening are very little, but it could happen, right? If there was something malicious or something came through, so it would put it back onto the landowner, whoever it is that is filing for that situation. What it does is allow the fast track of that situation in the event that an event happens like this. The pros and the cons. The pros is that it obviously can help, with these types of transactions. The negative is it's another strike against the need and function of this board. That's what I see it a little bit as. Basically, outside agencies are approving things, and we're just the regulatory fiscal agent that says yes or no. So those are really the two things that I can see here, is it really does take the actual approval out of our hands for the most part. So that's just my take on it.
I could, when I get contacted about sealing wells, I certainly could send an email to all the board members saying, this fits, just to keep this board in the know of what's transpiring between meetings.
One of the other things, Sheila, is I always say you manage it for 90% of the time, right? You're never going to hit the 10%. Even if we met on a monthly basis or even a bi-monthly basis, there's still 30 to 60 days on anything that would
Right,
happen.
and we still miss out on that one anyway. That was-
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when we look at land transactions, they're typically a minimum of 90 days out. When we look at, I don't know too many well contractors that you call today and they're there a week later, unless it's an emergency situation. So a lot of these, I think, they're not proactive, they're reactive agents. Like, the well's been sitting there for how long, and all of a sudden we got to seal it tomorrow? You can't tell me we don't have 90 days. I mean, I would think that, typically, hey, we should have at least 90 days to
Yeah.
seal the well. So, again, I'm just throwing these things out here as suggestions. Do we alleviate the control over this and really play secondary? We have the ultimate say, but I think it would take something pretty big to deny if one of the SWCDs said we're going to do it. So I'm just throwing all the things out here for us. And can we, with this grant money, ultimately we have the say, but can we legally do that? Can we legally put the authority into somebody else's hands to appropriate money?
Well, the authority
To
is
approve.
with approving, like, for cover crops, for example. Winona SWCD provided, gave Wanda the authority to approve the cover crop contracts between their board meetings. And that's what this would do.
But that's interagency. This is not.
Right.
This is two different entities approving things. Now, they have the right to approve anything. I mean, they could approve what color the shades are going to be, right? But if we're the ones writing the check out, they can do whatever they want. We can't tell them what they can or can't do. But when we say the word approve, does the constituent, does the taxpayer assume then legally that transaction is now theirs? That's the question I have. Inside of your own government, it's like we could approve for you to do something. Well, technically not, because you're not an employee. Do you see the layer in here? I mean, you're not a direct employee of Whitewater. You're an employee of Winona
Right.
County.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, but
So-
I'm the coordinator for
No, yeah, we get that, but I mean,
Yeah.
you're not an employee, your paycheck's not coming from here, it's coming from Winona County. So I'm just making sure that, can we, in the grant, are we gonna get ourselves in trouble by saying we're delegating the authority to somebody else to make a transaction with somebody that says, yes, we're gonna approve something, without it actually happening? Is there recourse to them saying, well, you told me it was gonna happen, we went ahead and did it, it got to the board, and whether or not that ever happens, if somebody else came back and said, well, you don't have, through this grant, you can't delegate that authority to somebody else.
And that's why I talked with Dave Copeland. I says, I want to make sure that this, because this is a Bowser grant. So that's, and then he also reviewed this when I sent it to Karen. And he said, this was his recommendation, the way it was put together.
So so let's just say the board denies it. I'm not gonna sit on this board forever. If the board were to ever deny it, what's the recourse? Let's say Olmsted County approves something, it comes to this board for payment, and somebody from Olmsted says, hey, by the way, this is why we shouldn't do this, and the board agrees.
But doing the well sealing, it's sealed in accordance with the state's recommendations for sealing. I mean, it's,
I'm saying it's
I think-
unlikely, but I'm just trying to, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the
I s-
recourse, the legality, saying that what now would happen, and who is just making sure we're crossing Ts and dotting Is here. Because we are giving up that authority for somebody else to say yes, that we arbitrarily just have to go along with, that, you see I'm going to this, I'm not trying to say yes or no, it's just trying to make sure we're not doing something foolish.
If it was denied, would there be money like either through the One Watershed Plan or the county soil and water?
Not necessarily, but could
well,
be.
the ones that were approved that are going through in Olmsted County right now, that's what they did do, is they went through the WinLAC dollars to do it. So that's what they did do. But
So
that
the
money
ones-
is limited as well.
The ones that we missed out on, did they actually seal them then, or did they postpone the project? Because
No,
of-
they
got them sealed.
they did a payment on one, and then the other one isn't in process yet. They got it approved, they're just waiting for it to get done.
Timeline thing intrigues me. I mean, if someone decides they're gonna knock the windmill down, and then, oh, well,
I need it
check
right
check
now.
into that, and
Yeah.
it's so much that, are they just gonna chisel plow over the top of it then, or build a new house over the top of it in lieu of waiting until the regular channels could get them some refund? I mean, that's, why in such a hurry? That's that bothers me if it's been like that for years.
Yeah, I'm not supporting it one way or the other. I'm just throwing out all the ideas on public record that this has recourse. If there's recourse, it was discussed. As a board, I personally don't feel as though if you're tearing windmills down and building houses and projects, you're working on a 30-day window. You pretty well know, hey, I'm tearing this down. I want to seal this thing. You're doing your homework, So, that for me, it's a little bit, especially if you're using a taxpayer's dollar. But I don't know, I'm just making sure, public record, that we've done due diligence before we hand off control. So, what we'd be after is go ahead, sorry.
But it looks to me like this second point, after coordination with Whitewater Watershed Board,
To confirm availability of funds, right?
so that, that seems like at least an implied consent by this board as well, if we're authorizing Sheila to deal with these things. But one thing I do notice is maximum payment of $3,000. And I was just looking at a couple of the well ceilings that we just paid, and one of them was went up to 4260.
This is 75% up to 3,000, that's it.
Yeah, and then Homestead did have that limitation previously, but we decided to.
The
at least
Orinoco
for-
one, they exceeded it, yes, yeah. But that's because they had a lot of funding in that grant.
We need a lot of funding, and I think too, the thought was that, that this was
Can
something
I ask,
that
do all these,
homeowners-
I mean, just perceptually, I would think that they would need to be in the Whitewater watershed district.
They are.
They are, so when you said Olmsted County, you meant the Whitewater watershed.
The Whitewater portion of Olmsted County, yes. And that's how the grant is set up, just for the Whitewater area.
Which, when you said Orinoco, I don't think that's in it.
Yeah, at their SWCD meeting for Olmsted, they had a well sealing grant that was done in Orinoco for that. They have another grant,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and we started at 80%, and also sort of eliminated the maximum amount, just primarily, I think, because this is something that was being required. I mean, well, sealing is sort of being required now anyway, but it was also in connection with getting tied into the city water and sewer that they just had put in, and that was considered to be rather expensive for homeowners, and so it's a little bit more generous, I guess, than what we're talking about here.
I mean, I understand Josh's take on it, but we're still running it through Sheila. I guess I don't personally see an issue.
No, I don't have a take, I'm throwing out
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
on public record, so it's been
Yeah.
discussed.
Right. With that, do you want a motion for each county, or can we do all three?
I think-
Are they identical?
They're all identical except, of course, you know, who the contractor is on the top, yeah. They are the same, and then there's different signature blocks, of course, but they are identical.
So we could do 1 through 3 as a lump, but 4 we would have to have a separate motion to do. So I'll entertain a motion for 1 through 3, if somebody wants to.
So moved to approve the sub-agreements between Olmsted, Wabasha, and Manoa County SWCDs.
Second. Motion made by Bob, seconded by James to approve our sub-agreements with Homestead, Waukesha, and Winona counties. Any discussion?
So you're throwing names, I'm just gonna follow the lead on this, I think, but does the granting organization, was it Bowser, or,
Mhm.
I mean, are they
Yep.
kind of okay with this?
Yes.
All
In
right.
fact, I coordinated with him.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
And that'll be the next slide. This one is just doing the sub-agreements right now.
Okay.
So.
And we're going through Sheila to determine it's not gonna be too much at one point or one
Right.
time. It's not available, so I guess that's a
Right.
good check there.
There's a legislative auditor in the state that can get really finicky about details.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I'm going, because
Right, yeah.
this is, I think we're kind of, because this is not
Yeah.
we're stepping on this line, allowing somebody else to make decisions.
Yeah.
That the grant was to us,
Sure.
and we're saying we're giving the power to somebody else. Now, let's finish this one up, and then we'll go to
Yeah,
food.
yeah.
So we've got a motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now on the floor. That is why I'm making a big deal out of it, and I shouldn't be making a big deal. I'm bringing it to light because I agree. I concur that there are people that watch this and say, well, you have a grant given to you, you have the authority, and you're handing that authority over to a different, it's not like Wanda and SWCD, this is, we're handing the authority over to somebody else that the grant isn't assigned to, and saying, you have the power to approve this. We are just a fiscal agent without that in writing. It's just a, hey, somebody said, right? So the questions becomes, at least we can publicly document, and we have it recorded that that's what was witnessed thereof, and that's what we were told, and that's why I'm just doing due diligence here, because we are
And
giving control.
does the said person have the authority to?
Correct, which is the function of the board.
Right.
And so when the
Yeah.
board gives up that recourse,
Yeah.
now if it's
Yeah.
if it's inter-department,
Yeah.
you know, let's say Sheila worked direct for us, that's different. But when you don't work for somebody and you're considered a contract, and we're giving the authority to the other SWCDs to make these decisions
Yeah.
prior to our authority, is there a commitment from the constituent that's applied to something that says, well, this SWCD committed to me doing this, I went ahead with the project, and now the funding isn't there because the
Yeah.
regulatory board said no. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but if it did, even if it doesn't happen, like you attested to, there are people that watch this to say, well, that's not correct. So that is why I'm having the discussion, saying, is this, as simple as it is to us, is it that simple?
Right.
So I appreciate that, Dave, because that's where I was coming from.
I guess I had a question, just looking over the financials here. The board here is not a government entity being paid by this board. You're all being paid by
Yeah, yeah.
Homestead County, you're being Wabash County, Homestead County, so forth, Whitewater County.
We're not agents of the state. This is state money, right?
Yeah.
We're not agents of the state.
So I mean, is it any different than Sheila than having the power, because she's not employed by us, but we're not employed by this board? That's my question. I mean, and again,
Now we're really in a rabbit hole.
but because I don't come here very often, I gotta ask more questions.
But the board itself exists as an entity, so the entity is what the grant is written to, and if
Yeah.
the entity relinquishes the control of that, is that a legal thing?
She's the coordinator, basically, isn't she?
But it's not her making the decision, it's the SWCDs approving
Yeah.
it. They're just coming to her saying, are the funds there? So that she's just, yep, you can go ahead and approve it, and then it's coming to us. My fear is that it sets statutes, sets precedent, that SWCD says yes to that constituent, they start the project, a month later it comes to us, and we deny it for some reason. Now who's on the hook? And there's that side, and then there's the side that Dave brought up, which is there are people that watch this, how the money is given to this board, but you're delegating that authority to somebody else. Is that even legal to do that? If it's in the same group, like the Wanda situation, you're in the same group.
Yeah, but you got people coming to you for these.
Well, they're coming to us. She's just the person we talk to.
Right, so that's my point. She knows what's going on.
No, like I said, that simple side is
Yeah.
easy. It's the complex side that Dave is
Yeah.
attesting to.
So before it either goes to SWCDs, it comes here, doesn't it? Or am I missing a step?
It could come from anywhere. It's just
Yeah, that's what I mean.
where it
It's,
gets.
if this board doesn't handle it, then it can go to SWCD, it can go to one watershed, one plan. So there's actually 3 different routes you can go for the same,
But it's
for
relative.
money to get the job done.
It's relative to where the
I
funding
think
comes
it's,
from.
well, no, yeah, it's all Bowser money. When it comes down to it, it's all Bowser money, whether it's one watershed plan, that's the.
But it still has to follow the grant.
Right.
The regulatory board over that grant is
Yeah.
who has to have the authority. And if you relinquish the authority to somebody else, first of all, is that even legal? That has been my thought process from the beginning.
Yeah.
Again, I want this to be streamlined, but I'm also looking at it from the regulatory aspect that Dave brought up, saying,
And, you know, it did get Bowser's blessing to do this, so.
Right.
verbally, right?
Yeah.
I got that in an email.
Okay, good. Oh, good. So now it's getting even better, so.
You know, so, yeah,
I know, on the simplicity aspect, Andy, I agree. I'm just.
Save that email.
Yeah, save that email.
So just
Frame
a
it.
thought, as I'm listening to you guys discuss the legality of all this, right?
Don't know.
Or you don't know, but could the board right now say, I make a motion to approve up to 4 well sealing projects within the 3-month time period until our next meeting? So that you all have agreed to that, which then gives Sheila the kind of authority to sign off on those, because it's only up to 4. So that each time
Each
you meet,
meeting.
every 3 months that you meet, at least you have that in place as a
As a
board.
window.
As a window, because then if these well sealing things from the public come in at random times, that possibly gives the authority to do that, because as a board, you've approved up to that many within a 3-month time period.
Yeah, 100%, and that's, those I think are the things that, that kind of just safeguard ourselves in case. I would much rather have it streamlined. It's just part of my position is to challenge the thought process to make sure that we don't get ourselves like in the ringer, right? I mean, that's what we're doing here, so, yeah, 100%. So.
Monetary limit in a certain time period.
We have that in
Is the
place.
same as, yeah, we've already got that, so.
So, again, I'm not against moving forward. I just want to make sure we've had the discussion to say that due diligence, that we don't see an issue, and move it forward. So, Dave, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, you can beat this thing to death if you want to.
100%.
48,000 is probably not worth it.
And that's always the scope of things, right? But, if I took $1 from you, it's still a petty misdemeanor. It's still theft. I mean, that's the reality of it. So, no, I agree. So what we have on the table then, and I'm glad we had the discussion, but we have the ability for Sheila to pre-approve well sealing contracts up to the discretionary limit that's already set into place. We would just need a motion to allow that to happen.
So what is how far out can you now?
It would be for a 3-month period.
Okay,
between
like what
meetings.
Don suggested.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would move the motion as so stated.
Oh, second.
All right, motion by Dave, second by Bob to approve as stated motion for Sheila taking over the pre-approval on a 3-month basis with the contracts, current cost average contract currently put in place. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Nay? Motion approved. Okay, Whitewater Drinking Water Protection Grant update.
Okay, the drinking water protection grant ended at the end of December. Then I had to go through a reconciliation with Bowser to get that last 10% of the grant back, and I made it. So we had some deposited, $16,921.75. And this one, as you recall, we had septic system upgrades, and we also had some cover crops that were funded with that. And and I know it's been brought up about scrutiny and things like that, and I guess I did get a taste of what that looks like now. I've gone through Bowser reconciliations in the past, but they've really raised the bar. And that was noticeable. So there were some things that, we got noted on. I wouldn't say I got dinged or anything, but they have a new gal who does the reconciliations for us now at Bowser. And I thought before that they were, but now it's really
Hence my due diligence.
one of them,
Yep.
for example, was a situation where what we got from the farmer, they did the DocuSign or whatever, and they sent in the scanned document, and something got a little bit funky, and so a part of the digit of the date was cut off. Just, half of a digit was cut off, and went to the SWCD, and that's all they had as well. So the date was not confirmed because just of how things got scanned. It was just kind of like, well, we know it was this date, but it didn't show that.
T's and I's again.
Yeah,
I know.
and, so that was kind of frustrating. But anyway, we made it through, glad got it through, got the money, so that's where we are.
Thank you. Sorry you had to go through that. Hey, get your dates right, Sheila.
I do not have cover crop money, because that grant is done.
Okay.
So if you have ideas where I can get cover crop money.
Can't get out that now, but.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, spongy mouth update.
I know I had present here about the spongy moth spraying that was supposed to take place in June typically. And I was informed that because of all the funding things going on, that they canceled it in its entirety for the year.
What do you mean, all the things going on?
With the federal funding
Oh.
cutbacks and state uncertainty funding pots. I think they were able to get money after July 1st, but that's not when they spray. So they just decided, instead of trying to get it to fit, it was better to not do it at all. So they're gonna try again. Right now, they're just focusing on education and outreach.
I thought they
Who
marked.
undertook that? Was it DNR or?
I think that was through Department of Ag. Did they do the spongy moth stuff? What was it? I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe, it was one of those state agencies. But anyway, it was,
That's fine. It doesn't matter. I was just
Yeah.
curious what agency had that up.
Wasn't there a group of people protesting the spray stuff though, or they didn't want, they were saying
Really?
trapping or something?
I think there was some pushback.
There was pushback
Really?
on spraying.
I had not heard that.
It
Well-
wasn't tons of it, but
No.
It was, well, from when it was presented to me, was that it's not toxic, it's food grade. I mean, so it's not, and it's not an issue with organic farmers or anything like that. But basically, it just confuses the moths when they're trying to mate, that they can't find each other. And
She got it for teenagers.
So-
We're being recorded, aren't we? I take that back.
Okay. Any other
So
discussion?
anyway, just let you know that that's not happening.
Sounds good. Agency reports, I guess we only have one here. Nothing?
Me?
Yeah,
We're awesome down here.
we're awesome.
What else would I Department of Ag? I think I touched on everything on the local advisory teams that, I think we talked about that enough. I talked about the on-farm trials happening down here in the southeast, with the NMI program, the program through Fillmore SWC that covers, all the southeast counties, and the one with University of Minnesota with Jeff Vetch. Actually, one of the research plots is directly south of town here. You take the blacktop south of town, under 90, go down the hill. Before you cross the little bridge to the left, you'll see all my flags. It's in that field right there.
And what are we researching?
That's one of the full end rate response curve plots, both pre-plant and split application timelines. And all that data goes into the end rate calculator for the university. So
Is
that's
that a
what-
little lighter ground in there?
Yeah, it's a different than what we've been on in the past.
Yeah. It's either gonna be lighter or heavier ground usually in those little
Yeah,
valleys
and
there.
hopefully it doesn't get flooded. So,
Okay.
um,
That little creek can flood every once in a while.
every once in a while, so he told me yes, and I said, well, I haven't seen it flood in the last few years, so.
Yeah, cross your fingers. Usually takes a pretty, because there's a lot that goes through the valley.
Yeah. We have, that is corn following sweet corn,
It was sweet corn, wasn't
and it had a cover crop on it. So this is, so we've done this rotation, this will be the fourth year in that rotation, third year in that rotation. That's not a rotation that's been heavily studied, so I'm glad that we have that.
It'd be interesting with the reduced sweet corn, usually 120 minutes of that, you know.
The EONRs have been less.
Good.
Yep. And then we have one up right outside of Elgin, and with the same producer that we've been with for a few years. We flip-flopped the fields. This will probably be the last year with that producer, and then we are going to look for a new spot around that area. I'd like to stay as close to that Duisma as possible for many reasons with this research plot. And the one that I have down here, I try to stay as close to kind of the Utica area as I can.
Do you, is there, when they do these plots, or is there kickbacks to the farmers? for-
Yep, they get an incentive payment.
What's the incentive?
The university ones are $2,000.
To do it, and how many acres is it on?
It's like an acre.
An acre?
Yes.
So we own an 80 right at Utica, just right next to the Duisma.
Yep.
So if you're ever interested.
Yep, it has to meet some criteria. Can't have, on these ones, we can't have manure history within 5 years.
There's no wonder.
So, and I have had plots right in the Utica Duisma in the past in several spots.
So this is right. We're not in it. My fertilizer plant is, but the 80 isn't. So it's
Yep.
right on the edge.
Yep. Yeah, and we've been mostly on Port Byron silt loam soil around Utica. And now I guess, you know, this one we're on a different soil type too. I'm trying to get them on different areas. There's gonna be one down in Harmony and then area, and that's like on a Fayette silt loam, and then there's one in Grand Meadow on poorly drained soils, which is a different beast of its own. So, along with these level 2 Duismas, and the modeling information and different things that I talked about, there was an age dating study done on the public water supply wells down here in these level 2 Duismas. And so we've talked about those results at each of the LAT meetings, and like how old is the water that we're drinking out of those public water supply wells. And that was done in partnership with USGS and Department of Ag. So, and then Kevin Keener worked with some other project partners on a tracing study that also looked at age dating springs, and it pairs well with the age dating studies done in the wells too. So, any other Department of Ag stuff down here? That's kind of like the research stuff going on down here.
So just out of curiosity, what is the age of the water coming out of the?
So the youngest one is Altura, and it's, oh gosh, in the 40 to 50 year range. I'm not going to quote exact numbers because I don't want to be wrong.
Yep, no, that,
Without pulling up my slide.
yep.
The Utica, Plainview, Elgin ones are older. They're in the 50 to 65 year range, I believe it was. Altura sits up on a groundwater divide. I think of it kind of as an island. And it is
Why is it? What's Altura stand for? It's Spanish.
Altitude.
Stands for great heights.
Yeah,
It's Spanish.
yeah, it's its own unique individual
So where that water, or that windmill sits out there on Oak Ridge, that's supposed to be the highest point in Montgomery County.
Yeah,
We were told that one.
Yeah.
Because we own that farm. Used to.
the geology up there is interesting, so. Yeah. What else is going on down here for permitting? They just kind of shared a legislative update in a meeting I was just in, and there was, I couldn't even list everything that was talked about in the legislature, what was passed and what wasn't, so I guess keeping an eye on that, but there was something, I don't think it was passed yet, but they did bring up the tax, I don't know if it's a tax credit, I know Steve Jacobson was
The
big on this
$5 one.
for the Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certified Acres.
Okay.
I think it's still being talked about.
Okay.
Don't quote me on everything, but I don't think it was passed, but I think it's still being talked about. I don't know where it's gonna go, but, the acres for the Ag Water Quality Certification, acres down here in southeast Minnesota, I think it's pretty good. So, we've also had participation with, farmers within some of these duismas going through the process, so. That's really good. Any other MDA questions that I can maybe or maybe not answer?
Thank you. Okay, great. Next meeting, are we back at Elba?
Yes.
Okay, next meeting, August 26th at Elba at 8:30. So we have those meetings right in the main concourse, the area there to the left when you walk in. Hearing that, anything else?
Oh, I do have one more thing that I just thought of, but it may expand up here eventually. We are voluntary working in high testing townships with, working with producers and doing, right now we're kind of doing a pilot of on-farm walkovers instead of forming local advisory teams, but, that was part of, in the work plan that, with that EPA petition. But our first one is down in Houston County. But it's also part of the nitrogen fertilizer management plan as well, doing education and outreach and high-testing townships.
I got a question. If runoff, nitrate runoff is what we think it is there any data at all on nitrate levels within the Whitewater River anywhere? We test that?
MPCA has a lot of monitoring information.
I could look on their database.
Yep.
Is it recently been an issue though?
Well, MPCA, we do 2 years of intensive monitoring, and that's every 10 years. So
Yeah.
we're in between that 10-year,
Yeah.
but the last time it was done, yes. we do have that.
I didn't know if there was that.
So you're 10 years apart before you know what your progress is.
That's right.
Given all the,
Although they're.
all the discussion on all this,
Yeah.
you gotta wait 10 years for the new data.
And the real bad part about it is that it could be that year. We could have a bunch of rain events. It could be, you know, it could be what was conducive in one small area to induce that at that time frame. And that's the hard part, is that how do you set a precedent for everybody to follow something that might have one thing influencing it? And that's what makes it difficult.
Well, isn't one of those 724 monitors, one of the Whitewater branches?
Yeah, we do have in the middle branch. Yeah.
So that's where it's being monitored constantly, actually, at least during the summer
Yeah.
and fall, and not during the
Yeah.
winter, but
Yeah. We do have some long-term monitoring stations, but it's not everywhere.
We were spending all this money all this time trying to find out if we're making any progress.
And that's the hard part is,
Yeah.
you know, we're monitoring
We're doing well, so
60-year-old
that's
water.
what-
How do you know what you're doing? You know, I keep arguing this point. We've never farmed as efficient today as what we ever have
Yeah,
Just
right, exactly.
Yeah, so it's hard to start pointing fingers when there's so
Right.
many variables. And so, you know, David, the soapbox I'm on is that you can't put too much pressure on agriculture because it's a global market now. And we've got to be careful what we do here because you can't just run out and start pointing fingers. So I think collectively the voices are coming together and there's some reason at the table. So hopefully we keep moving in the right direction. Never met a farmer yet that doesn't want to save money.
Right.
So, all right, good, great discussion. Thank you everybody for coming. We do need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Andy, second by Bob, adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sheila.